Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Okay, I want everyone in this room to do me a favor, every single one of you. I want you to remember what it feels like to get goosebumps. That exact moment when you hear or see something or meet someone and something inside of you shifts. I'm asking you to remember this feeling because it's exactly why I'm standing here right now. And it's this feeling that is at the very heart of what makes social entrepreneurship so incredible. 6 years ago, I heard a story and it struck me to my core. Now, if you had ever told me, a woman originally from the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan, that my life's work would be forever changed because of a small West African country called Sierra Leone, I would have called you Pinocchio. But it's the truth. I am what I like to call the accidental social entrepreneur. I call myself this because I never set out to be a philanthropist or to be an innovation. I certainly don't have the education or grooming to do the work that I'm doing. But here I am, the founder of the cultural partnership-based organization, Shine On Sierra Leone, which in 6 years has been the force behind a successful education program, sustainable building, nationwide adult computer literacy programs, and over 5,000 microloans for small business owners. But if you were to ask me, what was it that made all of this happen? What propelled myself or anyone who got involved with this particular social venture to create impactful change? It would come down to 2 words. That first word, believe it or not, is congeniality. I have always had a very deep love for people. When I was 9 years old, I was even named Miss Congeniality by the Little Miss Detroit Pageant. I was a little disconcerting because I won at first place and I didn't know what the word congeniality meant. But they were on to something because it is congeniality, the act of being amicable, pleasant, and social that has helped me to succeed in connecting with the communities that I've worked with. As a young girl, I thought being congenial would qualify me to be a great nurse, except I was never a great student. So by the time college rolled around, I decided to get a degree in acting, which was an even worse idea because I can't act. Thankfully, I loved being in film school. I loved the idea of discovering real people's life stories and telling those stories and finding other important stories that needed to be told. I graduated from college and quickly moved to Los Angeles. Fast forward 3 years later, I was working as an executive at a top commercial production company, working on multi-million-dollar commercials. I wasn't making the documentary films that I dreamed of back in film school, but all was going quite well. And then one day, I had a lunch that forever changed my life. I was with a close friend, and he had just been on a trip to Africa and befriended a young boy whose arm was amputated by the war in Sierra Leone. I left that lunch with a serious case of goosebumps. I went straight to my office and I began to Google away. The images I saw were haunting, to say the least. It was one horrific headline and image after another. Cutting of limbs, rape, and human atrocities so unimaginable that you almost went numb inside. Sierra Leone, a country smaller than my hometown state of Michigan, was undergoing one of the most gruesome wars in history, a war funded by diamonds. Those headlines and that lunch turned my world upside down. Because when I look at that image, when most people in the world look at diamonds, we associate it with love, commitment, and wealth. In fact, I was even named after the coveted jeweler Tiffany and Company. But the thought of what was going on in Sierra Leone, a serious civil conflict that was funded by the very diamonds that we value, confused me. I needed to know the real story. I wanted to know, how could something so beautiful and highly valued cause human lives to be so hugely undervalued? How could a country with such a rich natural resource be so poor that for a population of 6.5 million people, it only had 12 doctors and 1 gynecologist? And one of the highest child and maternal mortality rates on the planet. These are the questions I needed to have answers to. So, I decided I need to find out these answers and share them with the world. I did that. I quit my job. I raised funds to go to Sierra Leone and shoot a documentary capturing the path of a diamond from the mines all the way to the consumer and document the different lives that it would affect along the way. When I got to Sierra Leone, I was mesmerized. I wasn't anywhere near the suburbs of Detroit, but I saw faces that looked like my own family. This beautiful woman selling fruits in the market looks exactly like my mother. And it wasn't just like the locals looked like my family. They were so warm and kind and accessible, open. This is a map of Sierra Leone. I stayed in Sierra Leone for 3 months that first trip, primarily in the diamond mining district of Kono. The Kono community had been through hell and back. Nearly every home, school, and business had been burned down by the rebels. Every day, I would walk by the aftermath of war, but there was one structure that would stop me in my tracks every time. It was a 3-room building, each room about 20 by 20. It used to be the village school, but now it was a roofless shell of a building. In this structure, I would witness hundreds of students gathering in hopes of learning, being attentive and inquisitive, raising their hands up to answer their teachers. Those teachers shared a box full of nubs of chalk. That was the sum of their school supplies. These kids were so committed to learning that nothing would stop them, not even the seasonal torrential rains. I knew then and there, seeing those kids studying in a roofless building in pouring rain, that I had to help the school any way and however I could. And the great thing is that I had come to Sierra Leone with a secret. And my secret was this. I had raised $6,000 outside of my film budget before I had left LA to help in whatever way that spoke to me. And these kids and this school spoke to me. My original idea was to buy uniforms and pay tuition fees, but I wasn't sure that this was the most effective use of that $6,000. My producing partner, an astute businessman, gave me very wise advice. He said, invest in something that will last, like repairing a school. So that's exactly what I did. This is Muddy Lotus School before the renovation. With $6,000, we put a new roof on the school, cemented the floors, and made sure that there were adequate benches for every child in the school. And this is Muddy Lotus after. While this was a great success, I didn't really feel successful. I had barely scratched the surface. My documentary was unraveling due to financial and legal issues, but that wasn't keeping me up at night. The local communities didn't just need a film about them, they needed more. And I wanted to help more, as financially helpless as I was. So I went back to LA and I rallied my friends, my family, and strangers. I held fundraisers and hosted event after event. I told them about the resilience of Sierra Leoneans, that the people of Kono were not helpless and their needs were solvable. They simply needed to be invested in. And with that pitch, Shine On Sierra Leone officially was born. The experience of running Shine On Sierra Leone has been rewarding and challenging. I was far from entrepreneurial and far from knowing how to run a nonprofit entity. I was basically figuring it out as I went along. Professionally, Shine On was successful. We were paying teachers' salaries, and students were thriving. Personally, instead of wanting to celebrate, I was depressed. I felt like no matter what I achieved, that there was always more that was expected. I was overwhelmed by the feeling that I was personally responsible for solving all of the community's problems. It wasn't only a school they needed, but also pharmacies, access to health care, agriculture, and more. After all, the community gave me the name Socia, which means their firstborn girl child. To me, this was the highest honor, but with that came unrealistic expectations and an imposed leadership and unrelenting wants. What the community didn't know or understand about me is that back in LA, I was just Tiffany, a single mother trying to make ends meet. There were months when I would be struggling to pay my own rent, while also fundraising nonstop to make sure there were always funds to operate Shannon's programs. Something had to give. There was a serious disconnect. Being Socia was unhealthy, and burnout was creeping up fast. I had so many questions that I struggled to answer, and I wanted to understand why hadn't I tapped into the resilience of the community? Why didn't I see them as partners? And why did they not act as equal partners? Why did I think I was responsible for them? I needed a new way to manage myself and engage with the community, or all of our successes would soon become failed initiatives. But those are not just words. It's a complete reality shift. Remember how I said there were two words that are the foundation of what made this social venture successful? While the first word is congeniality, the second one is partnership. It was time to seriously change my operating philosophy from a traditional charity model to one of equal partnership and self-reliance. I realized that the change that we were seeking had to not only come from them, but also myself. I started by re-examining the way that I viewed poverty. I had to shift my perspective from seeing the community as a poor, impoverished community full of victims, to seeing them as the powerful individuals that they truly are. Then I changed our name from charity to partnership. But it was more than just a name change. I went to the community members and asked them if they indeed wanted to be our partner. It was a long 4-hour meeting. I realized that we, the community and myself, had our own habitual mindsets. The community was coming from an aid-dependent mindset, and I was coming from a save-the-world mindset. After some time, we broke through to a new understanding, and we began to use an approach that included all of our voices, hearts, hands, and solutions. For our first project together, we decided that additional classrooms were necessary to provide adequate learning space for the 400 students at Muddy Lotus School. And since we'd had this honest conversation about partnership and finances, we were committed to finding a more effective way to build than traditional construction. With limited financial resources, I stumbled across an article about earth bag building, a technique invented by renowned architect Nader Khalili. In this process, soil and clay, the abundant natural resources in the local environment, are used to fill rice bags in place of expensive alternatives, and in this case, that would be cement. The result is a disaster-proof structure that lasts for 1,000 years. When I took the concept to the community, they laughed at me. You cannot build a building with a bag, they said. And then I shared a video with them, and they were not only blown away, but they were inspired to make the process, which was really good, into great for Sierra Leone. They worked diligently with Tom Roy, the Canadian volunteer who had studied the CalEarth method, to refine the process for their West African climate. This is the chief that gave us the land. And this is the community. Men, women, and children and youth contributed their labor free to create the first sustainable building in Sierra Leone. And this is the Earth Bag building, completed. As a result of this incredible collaborative experience, two things happen. The first is that the community asked if they could name this structure the Unity Building, because it brought together the community in an unprecedented way. And some jumping for joy moments, of course. And number two, Muddy Lotus, which was ranked lowest of 736 schools in the region, has now skyrocketed to be its current position of number 3. We have sustained Muddy Lotus with scholarships, donations, and lots of in-kind services and volunteers. In the 6 years since starting Shine On, this is the proudest accomplishment to date. It's a combination of innovation, partnership, and social good that makes it so special. Since Muddy Lotus, we've replicated the Earth Bag building process, and as a result, we have built 6 community learning and living spaces. And now there's a construction company owned and operated by the locals, and it is employed every single time we build anything in the country. Their name is Shine On Construction. So as you can see, it doesn't take a 4.0 GPA, a business background, or being a nurse for anyone to have social ventures that create genuine social change. I'm here to tell you that you too can be a social entrepreneur, whether it's accidentally like myself or on purpose. It's not easy or glamorous work, but it is so rewarding that you couldn't quantify it if you tried. What it takes is knowing what you can bring to the table, which for me was an innate congeniality and a true love for humanity, and how to combine that with the goals and true spirit of the community you are partnering with. It also takes dedication, passion, resourcefulness, and a real love for humanity. So jump in. Prepare to be surprised. Prepare to change the world. Prepare to change your world. And prepare to always get goosebumps. Thank you.